Hello and welcome to the English Teacher's Welsh Board GCSE English Literature Guide to how to create an A-star extract response. We're going to do a couple of things today. We're going to firstly look at what the exam board wants us to do in order to achieve A-star. We're also going to see how we can do that. Firstly, let's remind ourselves of the two exam papers which use the extract response. The first is Unit 1, which is prose and poetry. So that's your Mice and Men, Anita and Me, To Kill a Mockingbird, I Know What a Caged Bird Sings, or Chanda's Secret Text. The second section of that is the comparison between two unseen poems. The second paper is a literary heritage with drama and contemporary prose. Now this one is your History Boys, Blood Brothers, View from a Bridge, Othello, Inspector Calls, Taste of Honey, and some of the prose would be Heroes, Paddy Clark's Ha Ha Ha, About a Boy, Christmas Carol, Lord of the Flies, Silas Marner, Pride and Prejudice. Good. Now, let's look at a couple of things we need to think about before we go through this in some detail. Firstly, I want to see what you know. So I've got two tasks for you. As you can see, task number 1, what do you need, do you think, to do within an extract question in order to achieve 10 out of 10, which is A-star? Secondly, what I want you to think about is what method should you use in order to accomplish this? So it's a good idea now to pause this very briefly and to note down or consider whether you know the answer to this already, because at this stage, if we're looking at this around May time, you should already know the answer. Okay, so let's look at the mark scheme itself. So for both extract questions, you're going to be marked against AO1, which is Assessment Objective 1, which is your ability to basically write properly and use terminology, and AO2, which is your ability to analyse language, form and structure. So to get out of 10 marks, we need to do the following things. So let's look at AO1 firstly. So you need to make sure that you sound confident with your piece of work. You should also start to be able to speculate or make judgments. So in your extract, you should be writing down things such as this could mean this might mean this could be why this happens later in the novel. A-star candidates are also going to be able to evaluate. So why has the writer included this in this way? Does it set us up for the novel later on? Does it also make us consider the moral to this story? And also at the highest level, what we should be able to do if we are going to achieve this A-star, we need to have a good overview of the novel. So we should be able to concentrate on the minute details, single words, and then link that back to the whole text. For AO2, so our ability to analyse language, form and structure, we need to show appreciation of how writers use language to achieve specific effects. So that's where you analyse individual words and say why this is such an interesting lexical choice, for instance. We need to also explore and again evaluate how meaning is created through language, structure and form. So structure can include things like sentence structure, word order, paragraph lengths. Form, for instance, could be the narrative perspective, could be the type of text it is. Is it a novel? Is it a play, for instance? But again, at the highest level, needs to make assured analysis. So you need to sound as if the analysis you're making isn't that humdrum everyday analysis that you know other candidates can make. Yours needs to be a little bit different, a bit more intelligent. But this is our method. And again, in the exam paper, it gives you the timings of exactly how long you should spend on each section. So not trying to trick you. So we have 20 minutes is recommended to respond to any of the extract questions, which means we have about 5 minutes planning time and reading and 15 minutes to respond. Now obviously that isn't a lot of time, so my main advice to you is to practice. You could look at the same extract a number of times, but you need to make sure that you are able to write a response in that time and plan it, because to not plan it will be a grievous error on your part. And you should also be able to factor in some proofreading time. But let's have a look at this in a bit more detail, shall we? So, I recommend, and I'm a teacher that's been teaching GCSE now for at least 7 years, achieving extremely high results in my classes, so maybe you want to listen to what I have to say. planning wise, you need to read through carefully, underlining key words as you go along. And I'll show you in a moment, but I'd also like you to start to note down what that quote suggests. Make your point. You might even, if you have time, you've practiced well enough, you might even start to include little notes of analysis. The writing we're going to come back to in a second, but have a quick look at that. If you wish to pause this and note this down, you're more than welcome to. So let's take a look at a question we're going to use before we go back to the writing stage. So, again, there's the information given to us by the exam board. You are advised to spend about 20 minutes on part A, which is our extract, and about 40 minutes on part B or C, which is your 2 essay questions. So this is our extract question. Read the extract on the opposite page, then answer the following. Looking closely at Curly's wife, looking at how closely she speaks and behaves here, what does it reveal about her character? Well, let's have a look, shall we? So, that's my annotated version, which we're going to come back to in a second. But here we are. This is the extract that we would be faced with in the exam this year. What I want you to do is have a quick look at this. And again, I'd expect you to please pause this. You may have your own copy of the text in front of you, or you might want to print this out. You can actually get an online copy of A Mice and Men for free, which you could use to copy and paste sections of and print out. But please pause this and have a quick look. Okay, now, my advice to you, we've got 5 minutes, so you need to be practicing annotating this as you go along. We're looking for about 10 to 12 points here. So as you read through, you should be underlining aspects of this text which show something about Curly's wife's character. Now, yes, we could go for the more obvious points. No, she's flirtatious, she's a girl, other characters don't like her, but you can hear you sound like a CD borderline candidate. An A to A star candidate will be producing things such as this. So as you can see, obviously I would handwrite this normally because that's what we need to do in the exam. But if you look along the side, you can see I've got my 12 points. This isn't an extensive and exhaustive list by all means. There are many things that I've missed out on that you might also want to look at. But remember, we need to get something from the start, and our last point needs to come from somewhere near the end. And it's in note form. No, this is for you. This isn't the answer. You don't get marked for this. So you need to make sure that what you have written down is quick and you can use it. Let's take a look along the side. You can see point number 1 comes from the first sentence. That's what we need to do. CW, Curly's wife, blocks their light. Therefore, she's blocking their hope. And it's her death, as we know, that is the end of their dream, their light or their hope. How much better does that sound? Secondly, as we work our way down, heavily made up could suggest that she is defensive. Therefore, it suggests she's covering her true feelings, which would then obviously link nicely to her confession to Lenny that she does feel isolated, that she does feel lonely. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but point number 3, her hair rolled like sausages. Well, that simile, and we need to start using that terminology if we can, if we're A and A star candidates for AO1, that simile suggests that she is meat for the men, that she's a character that can fulfill their carnal needs. And there's definitely this idea that she is the meat on the farm that other men look at and judge. And you can see we work our way through. You should be doing the same, underlining the key part along the side or underneath it. What is that telling us? So your point. And if you can factor in this time, if you've practiced enough, you can see that we start to get notes of analysis, whether that be alternative views, individual words or structure. And eventually we get right near the end. So this is where George says, piece of jailbait worse than her. And I've suggested, and once again, so I've already kind of used this idea, but once again it reinforces this point that she is dangerous. But jailbait specifically, and this is, you can hear we sound better, specifically leads to or suggests a criminal act, which obviously suggests her murder. Okay, now that should take us about 5 minutes. If it does take a little bit longer, maybe 6, 7, then that's absolutely fine. But I would always suggest that the planning is the most important part. If you fail to plan, you then lose track of where you are or what you've got to. And in particular, I think if we're looking at A and A star, Those notes are key. So let's go back, shall we? And let's look at the writing. Sorry about that. Let's look at the writing. So we can see now that we've got our points. We've got our 10 to 12 things underlined. What we need to do is create an introduction which identifies where this extract can be found, which shows that we know the text, but also we should evaluate why this extract is important, why it's there, what's the point of it. And again, that's your AO2, isn't it? That's your evaluation. What we need to do is not the same as a full essay. You haven't got the same time to look at things in that same length of detail. Now, I know different teachers will tell you to explore this in a slightly different way, but this is one method that has definitely worked with my classes over the years. What you want is a quote comment method which is similar to some of the reading questions in a language paper that we'll cover on another video. You need to make your point very clearly. You need to use the quote to support that. But what you should also do is include elements of analysis, and I would say for at least every other point, if not all of them if you can, some slight analysis. That could be your language, that could be your alternative interpretations, your structure. You're also advised to make minor reference to the wider aspects of the novel. So this therefore leads on to her murder, which happens in a later section. So we've looked at what the exam board wants us to do. We've looked at our method, and again I'd recommend that you take some time planning that. Let's have a look at what an actual response at A-star looks like. So this is unfinished, but it is half of what you need to do. So this extract can be found part of the way through the second section of the novel. This extract helps to foreshadow the threat the character has on the future happiness of George and Lenny. So that's us establishing we know what we're talking about and why Steinbeck has done this. So this is our quote comment structure that we need to follow. Firstly, the rectangle of sunshine was cut off. This immediately suggests that the character will block the only happiness and hope the characters have. The violent nature of the word cut also foreshadows the manner in which it will happen, which we know to be a painful end. So there we go. So there's our quote. That's us briefly explaining what this suggests about the character. But you can also see our analysis has gone a little bit further than that. We're now starting to sound far more analytical. We've gone from looking at the whole to the very specific with the word cut here. And let's see if we continue doing that. Also, the repetition of the word, the colour red or rouge, placed upon the character also suggests passion, suggesting that she is an object of desire for the men. Alternatively, we associate red with danger, so once again, Steinbeck could be hinting heavily at the danger Curly's wife is under and or poses later in the novel. So you get the idea. So that's two of the points that we've taken from our planning. I obviously need to try and make sure if I can in the time, again this is practice, we cover 10 to 12 points. But listen to that analysis, look over it again. It sounds clever. It's different. It's not just the obvious analysis that other candidates would come up with. This is what's going to set you out from being just a B grade or a low A. This is what we need to do to get our high A or our A star. We need to make sure that our analysis, it's very hard to do in the time, but we need to make sure that our analysis stands out, that we sound far more intellectual. However, as we know, we have mood and atmosphere extract questions as well. Now, these use exactly the same method as we would for our character or language extracts. However, there are slight differences. Firstly, in the planning stage, rather than looking for characters, we're looking to identify the mood or the atmosphere. And what A and A star candidates will do is identify whether it changes or remains the same. So you might end up writing things such as, the mood becomes more intense at this point. Something like that would be good. You also, as we said, need to stay tight to the question as we do with our language and character question. But let's make sure that we're tracking the mood really carefully. We use the same method for the planning, and then again, here are some useful words and phrases you might want to use. So the mood is calm, depressing, relaxing, oppressive, spooky, melancholy, which means sad. There's just some of the phrases you could use to help make your work, one aspect of your work, sound better. But again, what does it look like? And here we are. So this is a response to the January 11 extract mood and atmosphere question, and this is from To Kill a Mockingbird. But I always think that for the extract question, doesn't matter what text you've studied, you should be able to achieve a star with whatever text. So this extract can be found in chapter 6 of the novel during the earlier section of part 1. This extract is significant as it helps to highlight the children's suspicion for the Boo Radley myth they have created, but also shows that their lack of understanding can cause them trouble, something they learn to deal with through the Bildungsroman structure. The less inviting back of the house immediately creates a threatening atmosphere, as the children are well aware that they are not supposed to enter the Radley property. It also helps to explain why later in the extract, Nathan Radley fires a gun at the intruders. The moon also shines eerily, creating a ghostly, spooky atmosphere which mirrors the ghostly myth the children have created for the Radley home. The moon is also traditionally associated with gothic creatures such as werewolves, which helps to create the impression of a haunted house, which only fuels the children's fears. And again, there's our quote comment, there's that A-star piece of analysis, and once more we are A-star because we're going to end up using 10 to 12 quotes and comments, but the analysis is the key thing. We're evaluating the points that we're making are more advanced than your humdrum student. So thank you very much. If you want to look at any of the past papers, there's a link here for the Welsh Board site. But well done, you're more than welcome to look at this again, but always remember please, it's content, method, timing. If you know the texts, if you've revised the method you're supposed to use, and you can undertake that method in the time, you'll achieve A-star. So thank you very much, well done.